Welcome back to BeFM Drama, where all this week we're bringing you our 5-part adaptation of A Scandal in Bohemia by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In our 4th episode, Sherlock Holmes and Watson rush to enact the famed detective's plan to trick the newly married Irene Norton, formerly Irene Adler, into revealing the location of the scandalous photograph proving her affair with the King of Bohemia before she can use it for the purpose of blackmail and to disrupt the king's rapidly approaching marriage to a Scandinavian princess. Join me now, your host, Joshua Cornwell, as I return to the role of Dr. Watson, who has just been told that Holmes's plan may involve breaking the law. Holmes's question about my willingness to break the law took me off guard for a moment, but there was no question as to what my answer would be. Not in the least.
Nor running a chance of arrest?
Not in the good cause.
Oh, the cause is excellent.
Then I am your man.
I was so sure that I could rely on you.
But what is it that you wish me to do?
We don't have much time. It is nearly 5 now. In 2 hours, we must be ready. Miss Irene Adler, or Mrs. Norton, as I suppose she is now, returns from a drive at 7. We must be at Bryony Lodge to meet her.
And what then?
You leave that to me. I've already made my arrangements. There's only one point I must insist on, Watson. You must not interfere with anything, no matter what happens. You understand?
I am to be neutral?
You are to do nothing whatsoever. There will probably be some small unpleasantness, possibly a little violence. Do not join in. It will end with me being carried into the house. 4 or 5 minutes later, the sitting room window will open. You are to position yourself close to that open window.
Yes.
You are to watch out for me. I should be visible through the window.
Yes.
And when I raise my hand, like so, you will throw what I give you into the room, and at the same time, start yelling, "There's a fire." Do you follow me?
Entirely, but can I ask you what it is that I'll be throwing?
It is nothing very formidable, just a smoke bomb of my own design.
A smoke bomb?
Yes, an ordinary plumber's smoke rocket, fitted with an incendiary cap to make it self-lighting. That's all I want you to do. Pull the fuse cap, throw the bomb into the sitting room, and start yelling about a fire.
Holmes, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about this.
Neutral, Watson. Neutral. When you raise the fire alarm and people see the smoke, there's bound to be a good deal of confusion. You may take advantage of it to walk to the end of the street where I will rejoin you in 10 minutes. I hope I made myself clear.
I am to remain neutral. Get near the window, watch out for you, and, at your signal, throw this bomb inside. Then I'm to raise the fire alarm and wait for you at the corner of the street.
Precisely.
I trust you entirely, Holmes. You can rely on me.
That is excellent. It's almost time. If you'll excuse me, I must prepare for the role I am to play.
Holmes disappeared into his bedroom and emerged a few minutes later in the attire of an amiable and simple-minded country vicar. His broad black hat, baggy trousers, white tie, sympathetic smile, and general look of benevolent curiosity were absolutely convincing. It was not that Holmes had simply changed his clothes. His expression, his personality, and very soul seemed to change completely with every disguise he wore. The theaters lost a fine actor when he became a specialist in crime. It was just after 6 when we left Baker Street, and nearly 7 when we arrived in Serpentine Avenue across the street from Bryony Lodge. It was already dusk, and the lamps were just being lit as we waited for the return of Irene Adler. The house was exactly as Holmes had described it, but the neighborhood seemed to be less quiet than I expected. Come to think of it, for a small street in a quiet neighborhood, it was remarkably busy. There was a group of dirtily dressed men smoking and drinking on a corner, a knife sharpener with his whetstones, 2 guardsmen who were flirting with a nursemaid, and several well-dressed young men who were wandering up and down the road with lit cigars in their mouths. Holmes and I paced back and forth on the sidewalk.
You see, this marriage actually rather simplifies matters. Now, Adler's photograph with the king becomes a double-edged weapon. She's probably just as worried about Mr. Godfrey Norton seeing it as our client is about it coming before the eyes of his Scandinavian princess. Now the question is, where has she stashed the photograph?
Where indeed?
It's a large format print, too big for easy concealment in her clothing. Besides, she knows the king is capable of having us stopped and searched. He's done it twice already. We may assume she does not carry it with her.
But where then?
With her banker or her lawyer, There is that double possibility, but I am inclined to think neither. She's an intelligent and deeply secretive woman. Why should she hand the photograph over to anyone else? She would trust her own guardianship and could never be sure that the king wouldn't use his political influence and extreme wealth to buy off a banker or a lawyer. Besides, remember that she intends to use it within a few days when the king's betrothal is announced. It must be in a place where she can access it easily. It must be in her house.
But the house has been burgled twice already.
They do not know how to look.
How will you look?
I will not look.
What then?
I'll get her to show me.
But she will refuse.
She will not be able to. But I hear the rumble of wheels. It is her carriage. Now carry out my orders to the letter.
As he spoke, a carriage came round the curve of the avenue and rattled up to the door of Bryony Lodge. As it pulled to a stop, one of the dirty-looking men on the corner ran forward to open the door in the hope of earning a coin, but was elbowed away by another member of his group who had run up with the same intention. Immediately, a fierce fight broke out, which increased in intensity when the two guardsmen took the side of one of the fighters. A moment later, the knife sharpener joined in. A punch was thrown, and an instant later, Irene Adler, who had just stepped from her carriage, was at the center of a group of struggling men who swung savagely at each other with their fists and sticks. Holmes rushed into the crowd to protect the lady, but as he reached her, he gave a cry of pain and dropped to the ground, blood running freely down his face. When he fell, the guardsmen turned and ran in one direction, and the dirty man in the other, while a group of better-dressed people, who had been watching the scuffle without taking part, crowded around to help the lady and the injured clergyman. Irene Adler, as I will still call her, hurried up the steps, but she paused at the top with her superb figure outlined against the lights of the hall, and looked back into the street.
Is the poor gentleman much hurt?
He is dead! No, there's life in him. But he'll be gone before long if we don't get him to a hospital.
He's a brave fellow. They would have had the lady's purse if it hadn't been for him. They were a gang of thieves, and a rough one, too. He's breathing now.
He can't lie in the street. Can we bring him inside, ma'am?
Surely, bring him into the sitting room. There's a comfortable sofa. This way, please.
Slowly and solemnly, Holmes was carried into Bryony Lodge and laid out in the sitting room. The lamps had been lit, but the blinds had not been drawn, so that I could see everything from my post by the window. Holmes lay upon the couch. I did not know how he felt at that moment about what he was doing, but I know that I have never felt more heartily ashamed of myself than I did at that moment, seeing the beauty and kindliness of the woman we conspired against as she cared for this poor injured clergyman. And yet it would be a terrible betrayal to Holmes if I drew away from the part which he had entrusted to me. I hardened my heart and took the smoke bomb from my pocket. Oh well, I thought, at least we are not injuring her. All we are doing is preventing her from injuring another. Holmes suddenly sat up upon the couch, and I saw him motion like a man who is in need of air. A maid ran across and threw open the window. At the same instant, I saw him raise his hand to give the signal, and I pulled the fuse and tossed the bomb into the room.
Fire! Fire! Oh God, there's a fire! Save yourselves! Call the engines!
The words were no sooner out of my mouth than the whole crowd of spectators, well-dressed and dirty, gentlemen, horsemen, servants and maids, all joined in the general scream of fire. Thick clouds of smoke poured through the room and out the open window. I caught a quick glimpse of rushing figures in the room, and a moment later heard the voice of Holmes assuring them it was a false alarm. I slipped through the shouting crowd and made my way to the corner of the street, and 10 minutes later was rejoiced to find Holmes appearing beside me. Together we walked quickly away from that scene of uproar. He moved swiftly and silently until we had turned down into one of those quiet streets which lead up towards the Edgware Road. Holmes has enacted his plans, and Watson has become an unwilling smoke bomber with a guilty conscience. Did the plan work? And does Sherlock Holmes now know the location of that all-important photograph? Will he be able to secure it, bring Irene Adler Norton to justice, and save the honor of a king? Join us tomorrow to find out in our riveting final episode here on BeFM Drama.